Yemi, oh, thank you for tuning in. We're still here on This Day Live. Yemi, you were making a very interesting point about this SDP imbroglio at the moment with Professor Jerry Ghana prevailing in court.
So two things for me, as I was saying. I think there's a lot from, if I'm holding anything for Donald Duke, it's the fact that I wonder how much he did in terms of if I want to use out-of-court settlement. So obviously Jerry Ghana took him to court. And the issue, substantive issue, is that Chief Olufala is from the South, you are also from the South, both of you cannot be candidates. Now, this was allowed to, the primaries were allowed to happen. It didn't seem like anybody raised an issue. He now won, and then suddenly became an issue, which for me, I guess, how do you say the Latin word?
Post factum.
Or pre, like, pre the anti-factor, yeah. He shouldn't have been allowed to contest.
In the first case.
In the very first case, because obviously you have a Southern chairman, so every Southern presidential candidate or aspirant should have been nullified. Having said that, once this now drama begins, he should have appealed to Chief Alai, who's turned 80 this year, to step down and be an elder of the party, really. Dr. Killer thinks I'm playing nice politics.
But I think of goodwill.
Of goodwill. But
nice people.
Yeah, but that's an assumption, especially if you're which is to my point, if you're positioning yourself as an alternative, then the interest should be what can we do to win. Professor Jerry Ghana is in the same school as an Atiku or Buhari in terms of age and been lent around politics. So if, as a party who was initially part of the Third Force New Movement, as a party who wants to present a new face, Donald Duke would really be your go-to person over Jerry Ghana. And thus, therefore,
this is why I should do an appeal and get all the chairmen of the states together and let them meet Yemi Ademoleko's mediation group. And she talks to them like a sister and says, Baba Falaye, Uncle, this thing. Let's be nice about it.
And all of this could have been avoided if, you know, the right things had been done.
But
you know, if concessions.
Now, because we're looking to parties like SDP as a third force, but having situations like this, are they not only reading from the script of the main parties, APC and PDP? Is there really a third force? They can't get their act together internally.
Well, that's for Nigerians to make up their mind on, because they're also watching all of this. And initially, when we started this, you know, the issue of conflict resolution within parties needs to be taken serious.
Indeed.
In those days, they will say, oh, PDP is a family affair and all of that. You know, we've heard of that so many times. So in that context, you know, it says a lot about how you can give concessions. Yes, there will be arguments, there will be conflicts every now and then, but if you can just come around and, you know, agree within yourselves. In fact, that will give you an appeal to the electorate that, okay, fine, these people can actually...
There's something in closing that we should say, though. You know, we take this thing for granted. It's not normal for parties to go to court. It says something about our leadership, the people in
This is what I'm saying. Is
because
really
normally...
It's the same, it's business as usual.
Yes.
Do you see Donald Duke doing a Mogolu at this stage and not sort of towing the line that his party has set and going off on his own tangent? Or is it too late for these maneuvers?
It's
too late.
But
you can only appeal.
To your point as well on why this is important, SDP was going to be a part of CUP. So for me, so in the sense of, to your point about the same old party dynamics, they haven't shown themselves to be any different.
Not at all.
Indeed.
So another blow to your hopes about the third force, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that is.
Let's have fun at my expense.
It's not really to be honest, I think actually on that note, it's really at the expense of Nigerians. Because in a country at this point in its maturity, having 73 presidential candidates, it's a joke.
It is.
It really is a joke.
Can you imagine the ballot papers?
Indeed.
Moving on to the National Assembly, notable Nigerians have thrown their weight behind a bipartisan bill by 71 members of the House of Reps to push for a constitutional amendment that will return Nigeria to a parliamentary system of government. Some lawmakers disclosed that they were collecting signatures to ensure that they get the numbers needed to facilitate passage of the bill. A chieftain of the Northern Elders Forum, Professor Ango Abdullahi, said he supported the initiative of the members of the House of Representatives. He also said that the presidential system, which has been in operation in the last 40 years, has not worked and is ill-suited to Nigeria's peculiar socio-political and economic realities. Speaking in the same vein, National Publicity Secretary of the Pan-Yoruba Socio-Cultural Group, Afenifere, Yinka Odumakin, described the parliamentary system as being cost-effective and at the same time capable of throwing up quality representations. Your views. I'll start with you, Anthony. Do you think this is what we've been missing?
No, I don't think it was. I like parliamentary system, because it's a more transparent and less cult-like form of government, and it's less expensive. That is true. But I challenge the process. I mean, these people, when did they get this idea? I mean, of all the things going on in the country, they're talking about this now. It's not a bad thing. I'm just worried.
Timing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about their mindset, how their mind works all of a sudden. It's a good thing. They got about 71 people to do it. It shows you it's really a multi-party thing, because it's not even just... I think all the parties had a representative. Even
This is bipartisan.
ADC, that had only one person was represented. The ABGA was represented. All the parties are there. So it is a consistent thing. When you do big things like constitutional reform, I would like to be consulted before election as a citizen. I would like today for parties to take a position on what are the big constitutional reforms they're going to propose. Because when I am very allergic to this vertical top-down approach in which some people just decide, then we'll start to debate it. I think we should go beyond that. This is a big thing.
So are you saying you want all constitutional amendments to be tabled and not in a piecemeal fashion?
Yes, it should be said during the manifesto, during the campaign time, to say, this is what we are going to, we stand for this. And that's why you should be voting for. So there should be no surprise. The only thing that they should be debating for me in the House of Assembly, the only thing that the government, measures that the government should be taking that were not discussed are contingencies that happened whilst they were there. Yeah. There should be a plan they should be following. And until we insist on that, we're going to be getting surprises like this. Because I am willing to bet that some of the 71 people that are supporting this thing of what they're talking about.
And then there's also the issue of synergy between the electorate and whom they represent as well, of which he was talking about. You don't just wake up, a few months to the elections and say, okay, fine, they talk about constitutional or electoral reforms and have another part of, although there's been agitation towards doing away with the Senate for some time now, being too expensive. And they said the inexpensive aspect of the parliamentary system was, and just as we were discussing earlier, how inexpensive is Nigerians' governance system? So you need to ask questions like that as to the motive for this and how apt is there,
But I mean, the parliamentary system, as it's structured, even within Nigeria's madness, would be less expensive. Even just the process of electing a president that we don't have to go through makes it straight up even less.
None of that national campaign.
Exactly. But to your point, though, about engaging citizens, I think it also speaks to the fact that the challenges we have with our political parties, about their lack of ideology. So it's not a function of APC stands for A, PDP stands for B, ANN stands for D. So there's clarity in that you're aligning with candidates based on how they would vote and what they stand on. I think it was interesting for me, for example, the electoral amendment bill. Femi Agbajabiamila was saying we're going to the APC, will stand behind the president, and not necessarily discussing the merits of him not signing.
But this is the problem with the presidential system.
Exactly.
This is the issue.
So without even saying why, it's just because the president is not signing, we will not veto it.
That's
so I think for me, I mean, the idea of it being less expensive, I think the idea of the fact that, I mean, to your point about expense, your ministers, your cabinet ministers need to be parliamentarians. So this whole idea of technocrats falls flat. So if you're not ready to run for
of aides,
if you're not ready to run for office, you cannot be a minister. So then a bit more seriousness. And then you're literally in an open space where you have to argue and speak. The members of our National Assembly who will not say a word for 4 years. It's not anything. Nobody will demand it of them.
That's true.
Both as their colleagues and their constituents, but they will get paid every month for literally doing nothing. So I think under a proper parliamentary system, I think that will take that away. And Simon was making this point in this article, is that the whole idea of even the legislature just ordering, in a sense, almost issuing executive orders. I'm like, you can't.
And we've seen the arguments in the UK, which we are trying to take a cue from, how they bash the Prime Minister every now and then. So are we likely to be...
every question time.
Indeed. So do we have that kind of situation?
No, that's not guaranteed.
No, but then another thing, I need to ask you, can you imagine, as you've just made the point about the parties really lacking an ideology as they stand today, can you imagine a situation which occurs in a purely parliamentary system? If the Prime Minister loses a vote of confidence, the party will decide who will lead Nigeria, not us.
Yes, yes.
Indeed. Would that work in Nigeria?
Well, that's what happens in the parliamentary system.
But will we do a pure parliamentary system or a modified, whereby if there's a vote of no confidence, they have to resort to the...
I like the word modified. My fear is bastardized. Instead of that.
How was the Prime Minister chosen in the first place?
Exactly.
What, Theresa May?
Before 66.
So if the person was chosen, so there's clear understanding, all of you, so if Buhari, for example, everybody voted, Buhari representing Daura Federal Constituency, leader of the party, he gets to be president, Now, vote of confidence in Buhari, boot him out, and they want to go through. Nigerians, it shouldn't be new.
No, they will not.
Because that's the way the person that got booted out was voted.
Yeah.
So, but it's a
process.
It will be
yes.
Yeah.
No, nothing will happen. We'll be used to it. They'll get you. You'll do a piece and you explain how parliamentary system works, and Nigerians will be fine. I'll tell you, if they abolish Tuesday, and they say between Monday and Wednesday there is no Tuesday anymore, they just need to explain it. People will adapt. That's the new law.
Yeah. Today, you see banners driving down 3rd Mainland. Today is Wednesday.
Yes.
Technically, it's Tuesday.
But it is Wednesday.
We're that amenable.
And we'll be fine. But the good thing about the parliamentary system is accountability.
Yeah.
Yes.
The fact that 4 years is not guaranteed. That every day, every week, you have to earn your position as Prime Minister, I think is very good for Nigeria.
And you have the proper checks and balances and separation of powers. Because we've gotten a little lately, but we have had previous administrations where the president will just remove the Senate president with the flick of the wrist. Is gone. But now we're having issues with the rule of law where the executive does not respect the judiciary. That could address some of those things. But now we move to Congo, and in the Democratic Republic, with just a few days planned to elections, the building that houses the country's electoral commission in the capital, Kinshasa, has been gutted by fire. The cause of the inferno is still unknown, but there were reports of thick smoke seen from a distance early on Thursday morning. Presidential elections are scheduled for December 23rd. Incumbent President Joseph Kabila will be stepping down, but opposition parties still do not believe it will be free and fair. The campaign for the top job is already proving bloody, as clashes have been reported in Kalemi and Lumumbashi. Opposition parties view electronic voting machines with great suspicion, with some insisting that ballot papers be used instead. Another area of concern is the refusal by government to allow international observers into the country. So they have the opposite approach to us. Our popular opinion here, we're trying to insist on card readers, and they're rejecting the card readers. What is this? Is it an act of God or sabotage?
I think the issue of card readers in the electronic voting system, maybe from the experience of the West, that they're not also infallible regarding the alleged Russian hack issues, regarding even the Brexit referendum as well. So maybe to a large extent, it is well noted on the part of the opposition that they might not be too comfortable with that. Then now, reluctantly, and there's even been thought, he also made it known that he will be liable to contest again in future elections. So when you have situations like that, you tend to wonder that something isn't right here, and people have that agitations in their mind. I remember for this fire, in those days in Nigeria, public buildings, when they are gutted by fire at one point in time, just take a look at the source of the fire itself. You find out mostly it's at the account section, as to tell you most likely arson was a likely probability here. So I'm not saying that's the issue here, because they're still investigating this fire, but that opposition to that, the lack of trust on the commission, the electoral commission itself in the DR Congo, has been an appendage of the government that is seen to be exiting reluctantly, is part of all of this.
You were looking at the people opposing the card readers with interest, shall we say?
Indeed.
So this is a case of the witch wailing the night before and the baby dying.
Let's be clear, though, and I think the Commission has tried to make that point very clearly, that the law as it currently states doesn't stop them from using the card reader. That what the Electoral Amendment Bill wanted to do is recognize results transmitted via the card reader. And that's, but regardless, they will still use it. You will still need to be authenticated by it. Now, electronic voting, as if I'm not mistaken, part of the process is first you use electronics to capture biometrics, verify, and then vote, i.e. a machine where you vote. Before hacking and all that, Nigerians have been very sort of pushing for electronic voting, but people really not very sure. The INEC chairman and the previous one, Professor Jega, both of them talk a lot about the fact that because there's no trust or low trust in our electoral process, our elections are extremely expensive. And so you have fear of either hacking into a machine, or you can't. I mean, give an example of one country where the lady, maybe the returning officer, came out with the ballot box from her house the morning people voted. That cannot happen in Nigeria. I mean, all sorts of. So because of all the things they need to put in place, there's a trust issue, which I see in DRC Congo as well. And the challenge within elections on the continent, how contentious it is, that it's like do or die, to use somebody else's words, is really very worrisome. It is. The commission is not trusted. International observers are not allowed in. And the signaling from that simply is that we want to control our narrative.
But you say it's not a surprise. This is students of politics will tell you. Because anywhere politics is so dominant, this is what happens, where politics rules. If you can create a society where people can excel in arts and business and everything, and politics will just be for the ugly people. You know, it will just be by the time. Yes.
People want to serve, so not ugly. I don't like that.
You don't like that?
No, but don't forget, there's a lot at stake here. This will be the first time, if they get it right, and that's a big if. You know, this would be the first peaceful transition of power, if I'm correct, in the DR Congo. You know, from one civilian, well, I used the word civilian.
Succeeded his father like a monarchy.
Okay, so
we're having Togo now.
In Togo.
Exactly. So there's a lot at stake here. So should they get it right, which, well, from all indications, there are a lot of gloomy expectation on that. Should they get it right, you know, it'll set a precedent. You know, it's going to be a historic achievement in that regard. But incidentally, from an unlikely source, I was reading some time ago that I think some U.S. authorities were also warning against the electronic card issue regarding DR Congo.
It depends, though. So let's be clear that electronic card sort of verification is it's a part of a process of electronic voting, which is the way Americans vote, which is you punch a button.
Exactly. Because they were like saying, okay, fine, the good old ballot paper system, don't discard it. Don't play, you know, just put your cards on the table, or depend solely on that system. That you also have a contingency plan regarding the ballot papers.
And I think that's what the chief electoral officer in Congo, I don't know, amazingly, he's confident and defiant and saying that we're going to go ahead. It must be a man of faith, because 80% of the things are burnt down. I don't know how he wants to go ahead, you know, very confidently.
Just to corroborate that, that's basically what happened also in Kenya. They had paper results, and they had electronic transmission, and the commission was not supposed to declare results until they confirmed that the paper version they got, or the picture of the paper version, matched what was transferred electronically. Unfortunately, they were announcing results they got electronically as they came in. And that was Odinga's point, that this violates the process, and that's why they needed to start. So it's extremely
So you had
important.
a valid argument then.
Indeed. And that's why it was, to use Nigerian words, inconclusive.
I never want to hear that again. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Tunde Abiola. From my entire team and I here in Lagos, it's bye for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.